Let me, all right, go ahead.
We are live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the HOOPHYPE podcast. This is going to be either episode 1 or 2, but we're excited to do it anyway. I'm your host, Pete the Rock, and I got my boy, Jazzy Main.
We're in the building. Let's get it.
And you know what?
Lot of controversy.
Yeah, man. We starting off. We're starting off on a weird note, and I think everybody's heard about the Kevin Durant deal. But let's dive right into Kevin Durant.
Let's jump into it.
What the fuck? What the hell?
What,
I don't
what,
understand, man. It's just it blows my mind. Like,
they went from let's just say they're in a precarious position. They
no
went,
doubt.
they went from the top of the mountain as far as, like, like we said, this is all about the hoop hype here, and that's one of the teams that had the most hype. They would come up with a lot of hype. As soon as, that pairing of Kyrie and Durant came together, it seemed like they were instant title favorites.
Now, I know there's been news outlets and different sources that have like probably dove into the Durant situation and the net situation before, but this is this is ridiculous. So if we just go back to the beginning, so we have Kyrie and Kevin Durant in basically just before the lockdown, or right after the Nets, or sorry, the Golden State Warriors lost to the Raptors. Kevin Durant goes to the Nets, and Kyrie basically wants to get the hell out of the Celtics, and he goes as well. And for the first season, they are trash. Okay, that's expected.
He fled for greener pastures.
He ran, and he was injured, so he ran somewhere where they would let him recover. And COVID kind of helped that because you know what, they had an extra little bit to quarantine and basically get him healthy. So he was there, and on January 14th, 2021, they made the blockbuster trade to acquire James fucking Harden for literally nothing. Jared Allen was a good piece to trade, but otherwise it's Torian Prince, Chris Karis LeVert, and just picks. But when you look at the Nets are okay with that. You get three
Jar-
superstars.
Jared Allen's a great piece, but at the time, if you can get a
Three.
James Harden for just pretty much
Exactly.
one All Star for
Bingo.
a straight up swap, I mean,
That's
they definitely won that deal. Looking at the time,
at the
anyway.
time. Now, obviously, we don't like. I don't have the exact information of which picks the Nets gave, whether it was their own or from other teams. It says the Rockets received the first round pick from Cleveland via Milwaukee, and there was a bunch of other picks involved. But at the time, if you have the Nets' actual first round picks were probably worth nothing because you had Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. Literally, that is your team right
And the
there.
NBA nowadays is enamored with this. Of course, LeBron started in Miami, but the big three. Do you have the big three? And the media picks up on that too as well. If there's a big three coming together,
It's big.
three superstar players,
It's huge.
mega max type players,
Exactly.
there's a clamoring with the media. So there's an instant expectations as soon as they signed on the dotted line.
Exactly, and it always comes with a risk. And I'll take what you said about the Miami Heat, LeBron James led big three, and I'll raise you even further back because people debate all the time whether it was 2011 or if it was 2008.
I know where you're
This,
going with this,
yeah, the
Boston.
Boston Celtics with the young Rondo, an aging Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce. Now, obviously, when you look at ages, the Boston Celtics in 2008 were a much older team than the Miami Heat when they developed their trio. However, the trend is pretty simple. A
Well, the
flash
th-
in the pan doesn't work.
the thing is, this isn't the New Jersey Nets' first go round with this.
It's not.
If you remember, where did Paul Pierce and Garnett and everybody try to team up again
You
at?
ran
It was
in my brain, and you
The New Jersey
exactly
Nets.
the New
They've had
Jersey
this
Nets.
problem. They thought they had a super team there with that group they had.
Yeah, they
Blake Griffin was there. I mean, they've shuffled through the players, and it looks like, honestly, in my opinion, it feels like KD's just shaking things up just to be, uh, let's just use the term home wrecker, I guess you would say. And
yeah.
I think he's gonna bounce, man. In my personal opinion, like just speculation, of course, it's all speculation, it's all up in the air. But I think KD's going to do the same thing Kyrie did from Boston. I think he's going to, you know, ruffle some feathers and then flee for greener pastures, so to speak.
Yeah, it's
And to me, I think he sees what Golden State has going on, and I think he regrets leaving there.
you know what? It's always a greener on the other side type of situation in the NBA too. Because let's be honest, people say that about Kawhi. Kawhi hasn't played a decent season since he left the Raptors because of injury. Kevin Garnett, you know, same thing. He won one. He won one with the Celtics, but you know, he could have been a homegrown talent, like or not homegrown. He could have been a just a Minnesota guy for his whole career. He probably should have. Let's be honest, one ring, great, but you know,
And
it's
I think the big X factor here that is has died down because of the Durant situation coming to a head is Ben Simmons. He's kind of just in the lay low. Where he's not really in the narrative right now
and
because
according to sources, the last time he had big communication with the team, they were in a group text chat, and the team players were asking Ben Simmons, "When are you going to be joining us in the playoffs?" And according to sources, Ben Simmons left their group chat, just
and
left it.
that could be a big part of why KD doesn't want to stick around possibly
Because
in New Jersey. I mean
yeah,
Brooklyn. Excuse
100%.
me.
Yeah, I know it's hard for
Uh,
it's hard for the old NBA fans to let New
yeah,
Jersey go.
I'm born in '93, so I'm semi, old school. But I do like that the New Jersey Nets are now rebranded as Brooklyn. I feel like that's a fresh start for them.
Yeah,
And
but back to the
then
Ben Simmons thing, I totally
yeah,
agree.
this rebuild was looking great for them. I mean, you get two 76ers, the James Harden first, and then he goes, and then now you got Simmons, and it's just kind of like, what do you do with these pieces? Because you're not even sure if your team wants to be there.
I know, and man, it also
I feel
falls on
bad for
James Harden
Steve
too.
Nash.
I do
I
feel
feel
bad
like
for Steve Nash. Steve Nash didn't
I
need to
feel
be
like
part of
Steve
this.
Nash has the potential to be a great coach
Listen, he's a two-time
and
MVP.
ha
He should be a great. He is
has
a
all
great
the
coach.
tools, the knowledge, the skill set. But it's hard to the thing that is undermanaged about coaches is you got to be able to manage players' personalities, and that's an
Yeah,
underrated skill for coaching. That's what Phil Jackson was great at.
yes, he
I
was a
mean,
very good coach.
he had Rodman out in Vegas while they were trying to win the finals, and they still pulled it off somehow.
Yeah, you know what? It's again, when you look at it from just a factual standpoint, having a team anywhere at any time with a pretty much prime James Harden, almost prime, maybe slightly past Kevin Durant. Again, this is just again me saying it because Kevin Durant when he was on the Golden State Warriors was absolutely freaking nuts. That was his prime for sure, 100%.
A lot of people think that KD is the best player in the league still yet, and
Yeah, and
honestly,
that's
a lot of the time I lean toward that.
yeah. And then you add Kyrie to that trio, and respectively, Kyrie is one of the best point guards in the league. There's no doubt about it. Problem is,
Easily the most skilled ball handler in the league.
but I do believe that Kyrie was the folly of that team. Because you know what? I'm all for players and people in general having beliefs and ideology. You're getting paid to do a job, and he did not live up to that job. He did not live up to what he was expected of. And honestly, James Harden looked at an injured KD, Kyrie that didn't want to play, and he said, "I'm out. I can't do this again." Because he was on Houston. Yeah, he was winning MVPs, but that team only made relevance once, and Golden State came back and beat them. Freaking what?
Eh,
27. They only hit like 10% of their threes in that single game, and they lost in the Western Conference Finals. And then to go from that to the super team that had nobody playing, it's tough. Not it's tough, but yeah, it's
I'm not of the consensus that it's all Kyrie's fault, but I do think he kind of started this toxic culture
yeah,
because uh, there's no real unity in that organization as far as I mean, this is a newer organization. Like we said, they rebranded. They've had different owners. They're shuffling through players. They're trying to find their identity
yeah.
as an organization, and there's no real foundation. There's no liability there. This isn't
From
like a Miami Heat team that's structured you know your whole organization from the, the dude sweeping the floors to Pat Riley is all on point, and there's expectations, and you're liable for things.
yeah, And again, it comes down to it. It should have. There's chemistry should have been there. Harden and Durant played on OKC together, and Harden
That's
won.
that's that's
Like,
the really confusing point because the talent should translate. Like that's what I mean. If they were all winning, this would not be an issue, you know.
not at all.
But
And as soon as Harden went to the team, I was like, wow, they really stacking to get LeBron out of here. But you know, I am
that's a good
under.
point.
I am a very
Shout out
valid.
LeBron.
Shout out LeBron. I am under the impression,
You're
and
what, 38, 39?
he's turning 37 this year, and
37? Okay.
yeah, but
For some reason I was thinking it's 38, but he's still
but
doing it strong. And
yeah, he is. But
to not have anything in LA, they got a chance every year just because LeBron.
this is the problem, and I think people are starting to realize this. The NBA loves super teams because it brings in a lot of money. They love LeBron, they love Steph, they love those
It's a
dynasties.
double-edged sword, right?
But the basketball gods, just the fucking beings that are live in basketball, look like they just despise super teams. The only team that I can consider not just completely destroyed by super teams is the Warriors. Because the Warriors have been dominant since Steph popped off. And they've been doing work since 2014 pretty much. So winning 4 championships in the span of pretty much 8 seasons and making the finals, 6 times?
And that's the thing about the Golden State is it's hard to knock them because they are so organic. Everything was crafted
They missed
from the
one
ground up.
playoffs. They
The
missed one
scouting
playoffs.
department did wonders there.
100%. Like they missed literally one playoffs. They picked up a great guy in Kuminga, and they figured out
They
how to
won. They
win.
won the title this year, man. I'm sorry that I cut you off, but
No
man,
worries.
they won the title this year, and they didn't even have to use all those young pieces, the core that they had, Kuminga and Wiseman
Yeah,
and
Wiseman, what
Moody.
a coach.
I mean, they used Moody, of course, but not like they really could. These could
No,
be more foundational,
for sure.
rotational pieces,
And even if you
and
look
it's
at them
very
for just
impressive.
trade value, even if you look at them for just value and getting assets and turning them into something, they have more firepower
The
when they
value,
get
the
Wiseman back
value
for
is
that
there.
play.
You're right.
Wiseman's going to
I
come
mean,
back and either get traded or play. And Wiseman,
a
again,
former number one pick, like that's always got value as long as he's not
number
a
two.
or my fault, yeah, number two.
But
Pretty much he was a number one pick caliber, but
100%. And for his position, he was definitely the best in that draft. And when you're looking at even guys like Kuminga played balls to the wall the whole season and played decent in the playoffs too. So you got to give it up to the rookies that pop off and do work in the playoffs. But man,
the league is
LeBron
more skill based now, but there's always a place for big time athletes and
for
length and
sure. And again, I'll bring it back to the super teams not lasting. If you look at like the past 14 years, the 3 major super teams, or maybe 4, have been Le- LeBron in Miami, the Boston Celtics that won in '08, the LeBron again in the Lakers organization with Anthony Davis, and then you can also say these Nets. And for the most part, you don't really get like you get rings, but LeBron only won 2 rings in Miami. He only won the Celtics only won 1 with their big 3, and the Nets scrambled to make any playoff push and lost in the second round and then got swept.
the super teams are prevalent as far as league wide. There's many super teams now, and it's like a culture of super teams. But they haven't really flourished. To your point, I mean, like you said, LeBron they've won a few, the Celtics, but it's nothing. There's no real dynasties.
And
Like you think there'd be
yeah,
like the Lakers,
it's honestly you like it's not the 50s, 60s, and 70s anymore. It's
and
not it's
and
not
they were
like
they were drafted that way. You know, they
yeah,
didn't they didn't bring these guys in.
bingo. And
So
it's like it's the league is too good to make a super team. That's honestly the problem. And that's the thing. It is so hard to make a super team because when a team and the NBA in general has so much talent at their disposal, you have to ask yourself, why put all my money in 3 guys when I can spread that money out
and then
and
barely
make it
fill the
work
roster
for you?
out.
Bingo. And you know what? Look at my team, NBA 2K, my team. Why? Like you can spend your money and try to get one good player, and then you know what? You can if you get him, great. But there's a lot of people that say, okay, now I have the cap and I want to make some money. I'm going to use that money. I'm sell that guy, and I'm going to put it into other people that I can fill up my roster with.
Well, and another thing that made these teams of the past so great is there was years of chemistry. When you play together for years, you know your teammates' game.
True.
There's value in that.
Look at Rodman.
Instead of
So we talked about
instead
Rodman
of just
earlier. He would study how his teammates shot the ball so he can grab the rebounds better. There's something to be said about chemistry. There is a lot to be said about chemistry.
yeah, the built not bought. You know.
Yeah, the Raptors are again my favorite team, but they're notoriously good at that. They're notoriously good at making their team work together well, and everybody gets a touch. Everybody trusts everybody on that organization. Even when Kawhi was there, when we run the ring, that team was a well-oiled machine. Yeah, he gave the ball to Kawhi, but Kawhi wasn't afraid to give the ball to anybody else. He would give the ball up if he saw an open shot, and you got to have a team that can do that. That's why Luka and the Mavs went to the Western Conference Finals this year. That's exactly what they did every game. Doncic had the ball, but he could trust that his guys were open to score, and the Mavs were shooting threes and hitting buckets at a clip that was really hard to compete against, especially when you add Luka to the mix. So the super team era might be dead. They might just like again. I don't think teams will find value in it anymore because let's be honest, the past 4 years, the three teams that won the ring, Raptors, Bucks, and even Golden State. Golden State drafted well,
They were organic, that's for sure.
and there's something to be said about that. Guys playing their roles.
Will this be the fourth year of no super team?
If the Warriors win again, I can't. I obviously like people can say the Warriors is a super team right now, but it's very rare that you find a team like the Warriors where pretty much their whole team is organic.
Yeah, there's not really one guy that just like said, you know what? Well, besides Durant, of course, that's the
Yeah,
big.
that was, but that yeah, without lacking Durant, that team is pretty much all draft built. Steph was drafted there. Clay was drafted there. Draymond, I guess was not drafted there, but he's pretty much been
Oh
there
no,
since the dawn of time.
no, Draymond was drafted there.
Fuck, even Draymond was drafted. That's right. I'm
Yeah,
blanking.
second round, 30th pick, the very last pick of the draft,
Oh my god.
and he
But
lets people know it too.
yeah, yeah. But
But also in the rumor mill, I don't know if you've heard this, Peter the Rock, but there's possible expansion on the horizon in the NBA. There's rumors about the Sin City Las Vegas team possibly coming up from the ashes. What do you think about that?
as a fan of basketball, I'm always interested in when you can grow the sport because you know what the NHL recently, like in the past 5 years, I don't know, I can't tell you exactly when, but they added a Vegas Knights team, and that team, if you don't know, actually almost won the ring in the first year of their existence. They came second. They went to the finals. So
We
it's
we
it's
know,
it's always good when the league can expand because it opens the door to so much more. Not only revenue to expand the league even more, but you're going to Vegas. Vegas would pop off just from a merch standpoint, just from selling tickets and having
yeah,
A plus facility.
that's exactly what I was going to mention. Just from the money standpoint, I think it's a smart move for the NBA because we know Vegas is the gambling capital of the world or whatever.
Bingo. The only
And like
problem,
you said, merch. There's a football team there now. The
yeah,
Raiders are back.
the only problem
Uh,
is that it will make a lot of fans salty to not have a team in Seattle again because that's like the one thing people have been really like
People do
griping
want the
for.
team in Seattle, and
They
there's a hoop
really do.
culture in Seattle, deep, uh, large hoop community in
Yeah.
Seattle. Shout out Seattle.
And you know what? Even Adam Silver, sorry, David Stern and Adam Silver have both gone on record saying when they got rid of the Vancouver Grizzlies is one of the worst mistakes they've made. Because yeah, they got a
Well,
team in
and
Memphis, but they lost
it
a huge
started it,
market.
sta- it started out rough for Vancouver. It
It
wasn't
did.
a successful expansion. And as a Raptors fan, you should be able to comment on this. You know, one of the most because the Raptors are sort of an expansion team themselves. You
Yeah,
know.
Have only been around since 1995, and I will honestly say that watching the Raptors, just in general, communicate with the country of Canada is kind of inspiring because the
They are the
Jays,
perfect example of a glow up of how, if you were going to start a team in Vegas, how to
yes,
model your franchise. And it's also their first, if I'm not mistaken, the NBA's first international, outlet.
yeah,
I'm
and
pretty sure
their only
Toronto
team not in the
became,
states, the only team that's not in
yeah,
the states. So
yeah, and that was before Vancouver was a thing, huh?
yeah, And you know what? If you look back to about 20 years before that, the Jays were in a similar spot. The Toronto Blue Jays, they had the Montreal Expos that ended up not being the Montreal Expos anymore. So right now, the Jays are the only team in Canada, and they get a lot of support from Canadians because when you're a country that has one major sport or one major team in a major sport, you kind of gravitate towards it. There's a reason why the Raptors finals was one of the most viewed finals in NBA history.
Oh, it was magical.
It
And
was.
to that theme, the Raptors went from being laughed at for the quote unquote Barney jerseys to now they have a winning culture. Like you said, the Raptors 905, they're flourishing as far as uh, talent
People
pool and
dog on the people dog on the
scouting.
purple jerseys, man. That is still, in my opinion, as an unbiased NBA fan, from just a standpoint,
Oh
still
yeah,
one of the
now they're fire
sleekest,
retro,
one of the most
but
sleek
before they were
retro
laughed at.
jerseys. Yeah, but if you look back on
Uh,
it, pick
Damon
another.
Stoudemire came to a town close to where I'm from. I wish I would have went to his meet and greet, but I had other things going on. But shout out to Damon Stoudemire. He really started that organization and was their first main
Yeah,
big guy.
for sure. And then Vince Carter came, brought T Mac in. It's been a good solid
Yeah, and I mean, like
organization.
you said, it was a miraculous run winning that title in 2019. And shout out Masai Ujiri, man.
That man can do literally no wrong. And again, I think I'm gonna wrap up this whole Kevin Durant shit with just bringing it back to there is something magical about when a team that is not as, I would say, like pieced together like a mad scientist, when a team is natural and goes the distance, like the Milwaukee Bucks in 2021, like the Raptors. Again, they added Kawhi, but that was a trade of our hometown guy, DeMar DeRozan. Like that was our we risked it, and it just happened. So there is something nice to see that a super team isn't just absolutely dominating anymore. It's been a pretty open book since the Raptors have won the ring, and I think teams are realizing that there's so much talent out there that the super team era might just be the chapter of the NBA that has come and gone.
I hope so because LeBron really shook up the league with that.
Yeah,
And it's good that he did because now the players have more leverage as far as where they can go and more business savvy. They're not trapped in certain situations.
I
So
do
that's
agree
good
with
from
that.
that standpoint.
That is a very good way to think about that, and that is honestly, I always love the silver linings, and the NBA is always full of them. So now,
It shouldn't be so much of a dictatorship mentality of the league. Like, if a player's unhappy, there should be some wiggle room to, under certain guidelines. But anyway, back to which teams do you think are gonna make a big push this year?
good
As,
question.
as
Very nice
well,
questions. It's very
go,
interesting. So speaking of the Nets, obviously, I think a bunch of teams that are going to do pretty much nothing. The Jazz look like they're about to just give up. I think the Suns are going to underperform. Obviously, the Nets are looking like filth, and everybody
underperform from a standpoint of not the best team in the league record-wise.
exactly. And I think the what is it? We're looking at the some teams are just like the Houston Rockets. I think are just going to get kind of dumped on this year. But when you're looking at teams to make a big push, I think obviously the Raptors with the acquisitions they've got in the off season, and Scotty Barnes progressing. There's a video circulating if you haven't seen it. Scotty Barnes clamped the fuck out of James Harden,
I
clamped
did
him
see
and
that.
clapped in that man's face.
Shout out Rico Hines basketball. That's who they train out
Oh
in
my
LA with.
god, yo,
But
a
Scotty picked him up
sophomore,
full court, low, clamped,
a
hands
sophomore
low.
clapped in his face during the possession and after he missed the bucket in that man's face. That is a MVP, and a sophomore has the guts and the defense to put him on clamps. Scotty
Scotty
Barnes,
made James Harden look subpar in that play.
not subpar, bad. They made him look bad and clapped in his face. Like again, I love trash talk in basketball, but if someone claps in your face and you do not produce buckets on them, you look like a clown. And Scotty Barnes clapped after and during. He was in that man's head.
He
and
let
we'd
him
love to
know.
see it. So I think the Raptors just just pulling through with Scotty Barnes and that whole team. I think they're going to make the top four in the East. Obviously, we have teams like the Warriors that are going to pop off. The Mavericks are going to do a really good job. Uh, I think the
There's one team in
Lakers.
particular on mine,
Who you
the
looking at?
Boston Celtics.
Honestly,
They have the tradition. They have the culture in their organization. They have the players. They just now brought in Danilo Gallinari and excuse me, Malcolm Brogdon. Two long wings that can shoot, play defense, 3D type of guys. I'm really looking for them to make a push and really get over the hump and end all this Jaylen Brown or uh, Jason Tatum's. Like, should they split them up? Should they keep them together? I think I'm looking for them to win the title this year.
they're again with the acquisitions they got, the Celtics could do a really, really good job.
They put themselves in
Unfortunately,
a good position.
unfortunately, they have a lot to prove, and that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. Because obviously, they can step up, which is something that people want them to do, or they can fizzle out again. And if they do, they're going to be like the next version of the Suns, because
That's a
everyone's
good
looking at the
point. There's a
Suns.
lot of pressure on them to get it done.
100%.
They're like, you know what? We're keeping our roster. We're going to add, two pieces. And as we've seen in the past, it's usually two pieces that when you make those moves, that's when it happens.
Yeah,
Like the Raptors did with Gasol and who else did they
Gasol
bring in?
and Kawhi Leonard. They brought in Gasol later in
Oh
the
well,
season,
Leonard,
and they
yeah.
brought in Kawhi Leonard with DeRozan, and it worked. And they just they gotta do something, because if they do what the Suns have done, they're gonna be a laughing stock again, because
And we talked
they
about this
need
a little
that.
bit. Like I said, Jason Tatum, he kind of underperformed in the East this year as far as like the playoffs. But hopefully they can get it figured out.
Now, what about you, Mr. Jazzy Main, the man himself, White Lightning, White Flight? What teams do you think are going to overperform, or what teams are going to underperform?
Well, like I said, Boston's probably my number one as far as expectations of being, 1, 2 in the East. Um, I look for the Cavs to kind of make a move this year. They had a great year this year. They got a lot of surprising wins as far as consistently, and even though they had some roster issues with Colin Sexton being out, um, I am curious to see if the Suns can maintain because they've set their bar so high. It's hard for them to continue to set that pace. But I look for the Grizzlies to be also a very high riser this year, as far as like a perennial, kind of like where Utah used
Ja
to be. As far
Morant,
as
Point
yeah,
Ja
they're
Morant.
very stacked, man. And they brought in a rookie, a big body rookie, 6'7", Kenneth Lofton, and get buckets as in the post, rebound. They got some nice pieces. They also got Kennedy Chandler they drafted, who's he's an undersized point guard, but him and John Morant are real good buddies, and he's athletic, would be a good backup.
He would, yep. Now, I think we touched on it a little bit today. One team we haven't mentioned, and as a Raptor fan, I hate mentioning because I fucking despise that team. The Philadelphia 76ers. Where it stands right now, what spot do you think they'll be in the regular season, and how far can they make a push in the playoffs?
All I could think when you said 76ers was like bum bum bum,
Pretty much. How far
because
can they make it this year?
there's so much there's so many clouds surrounding the Sixers right now because they finally got rid of Simmons, which was a great move, but James Harden hasn't really lived up to the billing so far, in my opinion. I think Embiid got robbed of the MVP, low key. Uh, well, he was very deserving, and so was Joke. So it was very hard to tell. So I understand them just giving it to the back to back.
It is a discussion, because obviously I have gripes about Giannis making the All-NBA first team but not being in the top three contention for rookie of the for defensive player of the year. Again, we're talking about that. We talked about that another day. When it comes to the MVP, though, I think the biggest thing people forget about the Jokic MVP this year It was Jokic,
Well, he improved on his former MVP season,
and
and
there's a reason why I
uh,
didn't add anybody else to my list because it was Jokic. The
yeah, I
Nuggets
mean
were
he was the whole list.
he was the
They
starters and the
won.
bench.
He kept he's the captain of the ship. Like even with uh you know he might not have the best people working for him or whatever, but
Would you like to hear the
he
starting
keeps it
lineup for the
steady.
majority of the year this year?
Yeah, that's pretty much the point I'm trying to make is that they won even though they were ass.
Now, I love the Nuggets. The Nuggets are one of my best favorite teams in the West.
Yeah, they're fun to watch, man. That Princeton style offense where Jokic is out on the 3-point line and they're cutting guards. I love watching that.
So I'm on lineups.com, and I knew this was a starting lineup. I just wanted to confirm.
I like
Starting
Aaron
point
Gordon in that playing in that
for sure.
power forward
I think
spot.
I think Aaron Gordon can flourish with Jokic being his point guard, basically. But to have Monte Morris, Will Barton, Jermichael Green, and Aaron Gordon as your starting lineup with Jokic, and they
No
won
offense to those
six.
guys because they're all great NBA players, but
No,
if
yeah,
those guys if those guys were your like bench, and then you had like some more perennial type guys. But here's the thing with that, Michael Porter Jr. has big shoes to fill. He's like a number one type guy, possibly. You know, he's had those expectations. And can he come in and average? Can he get 30 a game and be consistent? Can he be a Brandon Ingram? Most people say yes.
but it's all depending on if they can get their guys back. Because again, for a team with that style of play, Jokic running the ship, no point guard because Jamal Murray's injured, no basically
You know, the lane's open, guys are back cutting, a lot of hand dribble handoffs, pick and
it's
rolls. I
exactly.
like their style.
I love their style, but the fact that they came sixth in a heavily stacked Western Conference off the shoulders of
Is
Jokic
very impressive
is
because the
crazy impressive.
the West is notoriously stacked.
Notoriously, the West has been this year might have been the first year that people can actually make a solid argument that the East was better than the West. The West has been dominant
Yeah,
for
facts.
for
In a long
for
time.
time. The fact that you can get a team that has Jokic, basically a bunch of players that are role players on most other teams, and not have to play in games,
Yeah,
that's crazy. They won 48 games. They
I would
won.
love to see Jokic on a team like. Can you imagine? Well, that's a little bit too much. I was gonna say Jokic on like Philly, but uh,
Oh my god, that.
Jokic somewhere with a little more pieces, like where he don't have to be the number one scoring guy, because that team needs him to be the number one scoring guy. And not that he can't do it, because he does it all the time, but I think he likes, he defers a little bit. He's a passing kind of guy, you know.
Yeah, and obviously I
He can,
don't
don't
think
get me
they.
wrong, he can get 40, he can for sure, like he can get 22, 30 points, whatever. Like if he
I
has to
do
get
agree
40,
though.
he can.
Again, he could
But
be an amazing duo with someone else. When they, again, Jamal Murray healthy, that's an amazing duo. Adding Michael Porter Jr., who's basically a 6'10" shooting guard slash small forward,
if those two can come back, they can make some noise in the West.
for sure.
Healthy, that's the question. Are they going to be healthy? Can they sustain the season? Will they go to the playoffs?
Can
You know,
Jokic is Jokic going to be able to handle the without getting any injuries? Because again, obviously, when you're putting that much on
he's been
yourself,
shouldering the load, that's
he
for
has been,
sure.
and like
And
just
I like Mike Malone also, their
Mike
coach.
Malone is a good yeah, Mike Malone is a great coach and definitely coaches that team really really well. But just from a player standpoint, just from their starting lineup, the fact that they won as many games as they did, they won 48 games, and I watched a lot of their games, and a lot of those games were pretty decisive. Like Jokic really steps up and just does work. It's tough to imagine that with a team with one superstar missing two of their starters that make the team pretty much the way it has been. And it gives the chances for
Facts.
Monte Morris to get better too. So you're adding Aaron Gordon to the list as well. So their starting lineup could potentially be Monte Morris, Jamal Murray. You add Aaron Gordon again. You have Michael Porter Jr. again, and you have Jokic. That's a very very good lineup
Now
compared to
here
where
at
they're
Hoop
at right
Hype, we
now.
do some different stuff. We got a new segment called Fan Frenzy. We're going to bring in a guest. They call out their team. We have topics and discussions about their team. And our special guest today is going to be Petey Pablo. Hi, I'm Petey.
Oh
So
my
joining
god.
joining the party will be PD Pablo. Give him the rundown there, Peter.
What's up, PD? You're live, buddy.
What up, PD?
What's
I'm
good, PD?
back to
PD's back.
Earth.
Good. Now, Jazzy, do you want to introduce PD into the next segment?
So you just walked into that pretty much.
Yes. Now, PD,
All right.
why don't you introduce yourself and your favorite team in the league, buddy?
Yeah, I'm a Bulls fan, but P. Will fan through and through right here. The
Which is,
paw,
Pat,
the
we talked about
truth.
him on the last podcast. He's got some potential.
and again, recently it's been good to be a Bulls fan. I know it's been rough since Michael Jordan left, but we talked about the Bulls the other day, and we were talking about the injuries that plagued them this season. Where do you think they could have finished in the playoffs if they were healthy for the entire season?
I mean, if we still finish just based off playoff seeding, I don't think we're beating the Bucks, even if we were fully healthy. So that'll
The
be
Bucks have been the big dog. That's shout out to the Bucks because they took out Philly. You know what I'm saying? They took Boston to the limit. They
I
always
think we just stole one game. Sorry to cut you off, but and that game felt like a miracle, like literally. Like I was so happy just to steal a game from
at least the
Giannis and the
Bulls didn't get
Bucks.
swept. I mean,
Yeah, that's literally the only high I had on the playoffs.
but the Bulls are one of those teams that they have a lot of depth and they got a good young core and they're at that teetering point to where they can be really good or they can kind of be on the fringe. You know.
And we were mentioning how the Bulls, it seemed like once everyone got injured, they lost that winning culture that they had at the beginning of the season. Did you think there was like no injuries and they were riding that high the entire season and they started off as well as they finished the first half? Do you think they could have been in a position where they might have not had to face the Bucks in the first round, maybe face the team like the 76ers instead, but they have still lost in the first round, or do you think they could have gotten through to the maybe in the Eastern Conference Finals?
That's a good question because we were in, I say we because diehard here, but
Yes,
we
sir.
were in contention to be in the same seating as Boston, if I remember right, because
Yeah.
we were fighting for that. Was it fourth seed, fifth seed? Sorry, but we were right around there. So maybe not have played the Bucks and maybe made it to at least the second round. So who knows? And DeRozan, with Caruso, Alonzo healthy, we never got to see that full package, like more
Yes,
than
sir.
25
That's a
games.
good point. And that's what I was gonna say with the Bulls is they have the potential to be very special on defense, especially in the guard position because they got Caruso, they got Ball. Those are two of the best defensive guards in the league right there. And then you
Absolutely. And
add
Io has
DeRozan.
the frame, man.
Yes,
Sorry to but yeah,
yeah, that's a good point. Io's like what 6'6", 6'7". He plays a guard spot, and he's got the Kawhi Leonard type uh, slight lengthy build to where he can be a great lockdown.
absolutely. But you've seen, I think the run and gun that potential is still there with us because we never got to see P. Will with it either.
With the
So
transition game, they're definitely an athletic team. But what we were talking about is Vooch needs some support. I don't know if they need like another backup center or just some more power forwards, just some guys to take the pressure off Vooch having to get most of the rebounds.
absolutely. If you remember, we signed
J-
Drummond,
j- oh, that is right, Drummond. I keep forgetting he's there.
and we still
Uh,
have Tony Bradley. So that is like at least,
6'10", athletic, played for the
yeah.
Utah Jazz.
We at least have size now. That was what we lacked a lot last year because starting at 4 was Javante Green for a lot of the season. And as
I was about to
scrappy and as
mention him.
great
He,
as
he
he
does a
is,
good job. He's a
I
little bit
was
undersized.
yeah, he's about 6'4", 6'5", but I mean in the new game that's doable, but you seen it wasn't, you know, feasible.
Now,
Because as soon as we seen Giannis, it was over. But
just
go
for
ahead.
reference, Chicago by December 31st, 2021 was behind Brooklyn for first in the Eastern Conference.
DeRozan
That's
was
a that's
MVP running.
amazing.
And by
That is
January
true.
1st, all the way into mid-January, and then a little bit in February, and they were also first pretty much up until February 25th. And then from February 25th, as the season progressed, by the end of the season, they dropped all the way down from first in the Eastern Conference within a month and a half. By April 10th, dropped all the way down below the Raptors to the 6th spot with a 46-36 record.
At least they can pinpoint that, hey, it wasn't just some epic collapse or meltdown created
Yeah,
by bad energy or players. They
it
can,
is.
correlate that with injury. So there's some
Yeah, it is tough though.
optimism there.
It is tough though to see after basically the last time they were first in the Eastern Conference, they were 39-21, and they finished with a record of 46-36, which means they won 7 games and lost 15 out of the last 22 games in the season. That is
Can they
rough.
be the elite consistency, win most of their games at home, figure out a way to get most of them on the road? Can they be like a Utah? I don't see it quite yet, but I do see them contending, of course, in like the top four if they can stay healthy. And that's where I feel like they need to be in the middle of the pack as far as seeding goes. The third, fourth seed.
Yeah,
Just kind of depends. Because I don't see Philly being as powerful this year.
really. You think James Harden's going to drop off a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know why. I just don't have faith in that formula that they have going right with Harden. And I like Tobias Harris. He's great, but I
I
just
like
don't think they got it.
Maxey.
Petey, who would
Yeah,
you say
Maxi's got a
then?
lot of potential.
Who would you say is the ideal matchup for the Boston for the Chicago Bulls in a first round scenario to give them some momentum going into the second round?
Definitely not the Celtics.
Well, this is all pending the Kevin Durant Woj bomb.
Yeah.
Facts. There's an
That's
asterisk
going
on
to
every
shake up.
scenario we've had to talk about
Yeah.
just because
Yes.
Durant, where's he going to go? What's going to happen? Is he going to be in the East?
To be honest, if Kevin Durant does leave, let's just entertain that idea in this scenario. I think the Nets still have the roster to be decent
The
enough,
capabilities.
and like that's assuming Kyrie's there and Ben Simmons. We'll put that an asterisk too, and an open-ended thing. But that I think that's sort of an ideal thing because it's like I think the Nets will still have the hype, but we could have a chance to prove ourselves against a team like that.
But
Because
their foundation is shaky, and the Bulls have a good foundation with their roster, and that'd be a perfect matchup. They could definitely take out the Nets. I feel like.
yeah, genuinely, not even just to gas friends up here, but I do not want to see young, scrappy teams like the Raptors,
Yes, sir.
or like that's going to be just a scrappy, grindy 7 games, like,
Yeah.
or
And
at least
that's
a
funny
tough
that you
series is what I mean.
that's funny
Like,
that you mentioned that because we actually compared those two teams as far as the Raptors had a good foundation, and then the Nets were very shaky as far as personnel, players,
the Raptors at
coaches,
least
etc.
have an identity when it comes to scouting and building that team. They've literally for the past like 5 years have been like, give us a 6'7" wingspan athletic freaks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That plays perfect into our podcast. We've been segueing back and forth because it's a good example.
It is a great example. And you know what? Looking at Jazzy's favorite team, Pistons have a chance to really shake up the East this year because they
Yes,
are,
we do. We might be a high riser in that category.
compared to last year, yeah. Again, you guys go from not being in the playoffs to pretty much, in my mind, being a playoff team.
Yeah, we have a chance. I feel like we might be on the cusp of the eighth. I feel like a good season for us will be if we can make the play-in. And I know that might sound ridiculous for some people, but when you've been a part of a rebuilding culture, and finally we got our man Troy Weaver. He's done a great job of rebuilding. He worked for well, he worked for OKC actually, and they've done a great job.
I can honestly say that if the Detroit Pistons do not win more than their season total this year of 23, that's a travesty. I can
that's
guarantee
so
they're
true.
not going to win 23 games. They're going to win more than 23 games this year.
Yeah, Troy Weaver's done a great job of the executive position, but
PD, you said
we're
something
kind of
about
on
Trey.
that.
Do you think that they have the potential to just kind of be where they are still?
Well, that's what I was going to refer to. Is it's hard to we're in that spot to where we want to win, but we're not good enough to really make any noise in the playoffs. So I almost would rather us kind of
Enter
cultivate our stars and kind of rest them when need be, and kind of
enter the Wembanyama sweepstakes.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to say the word because it's a banned word, you know, the
Oh no.
TANK.
Anyway, no,
We mentioned that before, but
you kind of
There's
had
another
this.
word for it. It's called the process. But go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry.
but I will be real. Like, I think it's kind of okay to say it because the Spurs are pretty much saying, "Yep, we've gone full speed ahead in the sweepstakes."
it's the smart thing to do because you know these superstars, they're like LeBron, he's 37. I mean, you got to do well in the drafts.
Yeah,
Not to mention Utah too, as far
And
as
Detroit did great in the draft, so I'm very happy with how that turned out.
yeah. This year, if whoever has like basically the best three odds, the three teams with those highest odds are going to be like just praying and crossing every finger and toe they own to get a glimpse of having Victor on their team because he can literally change the face not only of the franchise he goes to, but literally the NBA as a whole. Because
A generational player.
I don't think we've ever seen someone like that. I still, I still can't believe it. Man's supposed to be 7'3", looks like he's 7'5", and has handles like some of the best point guards in
KD
the
and
league.
Like he looks like Durant out there.
He looks like
beautiful
Durant.
jumper.
He's just 6 inches taller than Durant, which is scary. Because if he can be a Durant that has an extra 6 inches of height, whew. And he's also
But he,
defensively really good. Like he's a defensive really good player because of the length, because of the arms he's got. Like we made a comment, we had saw a photo of Kazi. He was outside the restricted area and looked like he could touch the rim.
yeah, it was very impressive.
Very impressive.
And a team we haven't really covered this year much, and there's also a lot of questions around, is the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, they've kind of been mediocre for what they've had. They can't really get far in the West, or I mean, they're kind of in the middle of the pack, I'd say. But
At least Lillard got the
y-
bag.
yeah, I mean, you still feel bad for him. You're like, at least he got, like you said, at least he got the bag. But
It's kind of sad when Sacramento had 3 more wins than Portland.
and Sacramento's a
That's
team that's
wild.
always on the fringe.
Literally. And I think the saddest part is when you look at the record for the Portland Trailblazers, they lost every single game between March 21st and April 10th. They were
Yeah, I seen
20,
they
they were
finished on an 0
27
and 10.
they were 27-44. They ended the season 27-55.
yeah, that's not a good look.
No, it
When
is
you only
not.
win three more games than a completely rebuilding OKC team that brings in Chet Holmgren, and then they also have you know, they got two Jalen Williamses for goodness sakes,
Yeah,
and then
And Poku.
they got all kinds of draft picks still.
they do.
And what does Portland have? They don't have much, man.
They don't
They
have
were one
much.
of them teams that were supposedly going to get Jalen Duran, but luckily Detroit snagged him. Way to go, Detroit.
And the sad thing about Portland is if you look back, basically they were a play-in contender all the way until the end of November, and then they just fell off a cliff, just died, just got wrecked.
I,
They
I,
cannot make it past the 9th spot in the Western Conference.
I look for Memphis and Dallas to be the big movers as far as up the Western Conference standings. But I look
You
for,
think Memphis can get higher than 3rd seed in the West?
well, they were second in the Western Conference as far as wins, but
That's right.
I look for them to take Phoenix's spot, actually. I think Phoenix is going to drop off a little bit, and I
Oh, you
think,
think that Memphis is going to win more games this year than Golden State? Ooh,
whoo,
that's a hot take.
that is a hot take, ain't it?
Ooh, we got a hot
I'm
one.
a, I'm a, I'm a, I'm gonna burn it in. You know what I'm saying?
I'll defer to Petey as a Bulls fan that's unbiased. Would you think that the Memphis Grizzlies can overtake the Golden State Warriors in the West this year?
I mean, you can say they kind of did last year as far as regular season finish, but
But the
um,
Golden State was they were understaffed with their team. They had a lot of they still had Wiseman on the injury reserve.
that's true. Playing in the G League.
Yeah,
Um,
and also Kuminga was only his rookie season. I think Kuminga will just get better. it's gonna be interesting because I think Jaws can still get better. So that'll be a fight. That'll be an interesting Western Conference matchup.
Yeah, I think Josh should be
It'll
a
be a good one
favorite
to look.
betting wise, like to be, I won't say an underdog, but sort of a dark horse in the MVP race. I think you'll see that kind of
Ooh,
rise this offseason. But
that's a good way to finish off. MVP.
Oh,
Hot take. Top five in MVP this year. I'll start with PD. You're the guest. Five people right now you could put at the top five for the MVP voting by the end of the season.
Luca, Giannis, Ja, uh, I want to go with
tell him.
chalk here with Jokic because it's almost
It's
at a name fatigue point,
Yeah,
kind
but
of
it's
given,
like,
huh?
it's
yeah, it's
kind of
kind of a
given.
But we
given.
talked about that in the last podcast, actually. Also, it was voter fatigue and overlooking greatness, like Jokic having these stats and just making it look routine, like
Like
somebody like
Giannis.
LeBron James does.
Like Giannis
Also,
does.
Giannis as well. Yeah, that was the main example.
PD, who's your fifth?
My fifth name, I'm going to go with a hot take here. Fully healthy, I believe he has a chance to at least
Oh,
be
you're
in the
gonna say
running.
LeBron James, aren't you?
Nope, I'm going to say Zion Williamson, baby.
Whoa!
I think the Pelicans are going
Whoa!
to. I think the Pelicans are going to be the high risers in the West. I'm
Fan
not going to say they're
frenzy.
finishing top
We're in a
four. I'm
frenzy.
saying they're finishing better than what they did last season, and they are making
Okay.
the playoffs. And
Yo, wow. So we got
and Zion will at
Luca,
Mic
least be in the
drop.
running. I'm not saying he's
Zion.
going to be a top runner. I'm not
He's not
saying
saying he's
he's
gonna
that
win it, but
guy.
he's saying he'll be there.
I'm saying he's going to be at the end of the season. People are going to be like, Zion should be mentioned. That's all I'm saying.
All right, Jazzy, I'm gonna defer to you, and we can come back to that. What are your top five for
I,
MVP race?
I'm golf clap for Petey because that was a great
That is a fucking
list of
hot
five.
take.
And I don't want to steal his five, but there's some that's going to be, of course, they're
Everyone,
there.
Of
of
course,
course.
yeah.
Giannis, of course, he's
Yeah.
he's he's always going to be there, and Jokic, those two
Unless he gets injured, but
are up
he'll be there
there.
too. Yeah.
But I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna defer to Embiid as well, because I kind of
Yeah.
feel like he should have won it this year, but Jokic improved on his MVP season, like we said earlier. But I'm gonna put Jason Tatum in there. Actually, I think
Ooh.
Boston's gonna. That's my spicy take. I think Tatum. I'm like Petey with Zion. I don't think he'll win it per se, but I think he'll kind of float around, in the top three, top five, as far as MVP voting goes. Uh, so that's four. My fifth. Mm, It's hard to say really, but
If you want,
I'm
we
gonna have
can
to
come
just
back to you.
I'm gonna have to just close out with Luca, man. But just because
Yeah, Luca. I think at this
he's kind of
point,
one of them ones, like
yeah,
you got those three or four that are gonna be there.
I totally agree. Now, I love the Luca in the top five because of their acquisition of Christian Wood. I think that puts them in a Western
Hit.
Conference position that they can finally crack the top four, which does very, very dramatically improve one's odds of winning MVP. Because other than Russell Westbrook and Jokic now, the last 50 MVPs or the 50 years of MVP have been a team that's ranked first or second in the league and their conference.
I do
So
think this could be the year that he snags it.
I do think as well. And people were saying within the first 5 years, Lucas should win MVP. So I got to go with my boy Giannis. Again, I totally agree with PD, and I've talked about this. Voter fatigue is really bad in the NBA because people just basically, oh, he's won so much. And you know what?
So tired of greatness.
Yeah, LeBron might be the most snubbed MVP of all time. You
When
know,
the
That's a great
narrative is
point.
always the same, that gets boring to
it
to
does.
these casuals that's not appreciating what everybody's
Yeah,
doing on the court
because
nightly.
the other thing, like I'm putting Giannis and Joker on my list. So the first three I'm putting are Jokic, Giannis, and Joker. With Giannis is consistently great, and the Joker is a center with a triple double potential every season that he's won MVP. As perspective, a triple double by a center. The last center to come close to that has been Arvydas Sabonis, who is considered one of the best, if not the best, passing big men of all time. And this year, Joker averaged more points, and he almost averaged 14 or 15 rebounds a game with an 8.5 assists. That's fucked. So
And
it's
another
like
thing about the MVP voting is I like that winning matters because that
winning
might be
should
the
matter.
differentiating thing that gets like one of these guys. If if Luka don't win as many games as Jokic and they have the same season, you know that'll
Now,
be the
my
factor. And I like
my
that plays a factor.
my hot take for this year's MVP.
Drum roll, please.
Wardell Stephen Curry is going to be in the top 5 for MVP voting
Woo!
by the end of the year.
Oh,
He is
put some
Give him his
respect on
he
Steph
respect.
is
Curry's
going
name.
to, I guarantee, now that he has the chip without any bullshit and his finals MVP, his stock's growing. And he's going to take this as a stepping stone because Steph will not step down and start to relax. He will take this and will fucking rise his way to the top. He's the only
He
unanimous
won every
MVP.
other award this year, so he's got to
Bingo.
come after that MVP.
Bingo. And if I gotta go with fifth person to win an MVP, I'm biased because I could put Embiid in this spot, but I'm not going to because even though I know I'm going to be wrong by not putting him there, I think I'm going to have to put Ja. Ja's going to be the fifth in that race because, like, just from a growth
He's on
standpoint,
that realm of he could take it.
D
he's
Rose.
on the high rise. And again, I think this year having basically 3 big men in the final 3 for MVP racing, I don't think it can happen again. I can't see it happening a third time or a second time in a row because it's never been done. It's like not having a guard in MVP voting for top 3 is crazy. It's like almost unheard of, and it hasn't like there has been a point where the NBA has been dominated by bigs, but like it's it's it's
If
weird.
if Ja can come out and the Grizzlies take care of business like they usually do at home, and like if they do like I'm predicting, and they take the best record in the league, kind of like Utah was doing there for a while, and I could
I
see him
think,
doing that,
Phoenix.
averaging close to 30.
and if he
Yeah,
does that
Phoenix
with
here recently, yeah.
the Memphis Grizzlies team, I'm not saying the Memphis Grizzlies team isn't good. I'm just saying compared to some of the other teams in the league, if he can do that while playing on the team like the Memphis Grizzlies and putting them in first in the West or even first in the league, I think they kind of have to. Like
And their core is so upstart still. They're not really like they don't really have an aging group,
they got Triple
you know.
J, Jared Jackson Jr. They got the
Dylan
And
they got a
Brooks.
couple Canadians on
Dylan
the
Brooks,
team.
Desmond Bain,
They got
they're
Steven
pretty
Adams.
loaded.
they got a good team, but it's not like some of the teams we've seen, especially from like teams this year, because there have been
I
some.
like the rivalry that Golden State and Memphis had as well. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
If Ja can stay healthy in the playoffs, because that was really unfortunate in that series that Ja was pretty much sidelined for the better half of the series, that could have been a really good Game 7 series. Like just
That'll be an interesting storyline if they meet up in the Western Conference Finals.
because I remember you seeing Ja in at the end of that Game 6 that they lost. He was like, "What are we gonna do? I was injured." Like he knew. He was like, "Good game, bro." But if he's healthy, I
A
think
lot of
him.
Twitter beef.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be fire in the league this year. The playoffs are gonna come, and Durant's gonna shit on he's about to shit on everything. He's about to flip scripts on their head, and I think the next thing we got to do is just fucking pray that it happens quick because I think people are getting sick and tired of just hearing the beef. They want to see something hit the they want to see something hit the sizzle. They want to see something hit the fucking barbecue. They want to see something hit the skillet, man. They want to see some fire.
Speaking
So
of, if I could have just some honorable mentions, we could go like 1 or 2.
Sure.
Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker, as far as like MVP, not like or taking steps forward.
have the
There's
potential to.
I say
there
potential,
are
but
there are chances. There's a world in where Minnesota just clicks with Gobert, Cat, and Anthony Edwards, and Anthony Edwards is averaging like 25 a game.
Anthony Edwards, man, he's got bunnies. He's got athleticism. He's got a good IQ for the game. So I can see him being top 10 for MVP voting. Maybe
For
Yeah,
he's.
honorable
Devin Booker
mention, for
just
me, I will take LaMelo Ball.
that's a
Ooh.
great one.
The
Because
only
he's gonna have the usage rate, you know.
if I was to give an honorable mention, LeBron. I think LeBron is
Yeah,
going to try to hit that oldest MVP ever because I
and
think
he's going for the points record. We know that,
yeah he is, and this year he can do it. This year he can actually beat Kareem. So you can tell he's probably going to come
which
in
is
and
crazy for
yeah.
a pass first type of player.
It is
That is
crazy.
really crazy.
It's crazy as hell. I would say if LeBron can make a push this year, it's going to put voters in a very tough spot to not give him that credit. Because obviously this year was a bad Lakers year, and you can't really give him credit for doing anything because a lot of his points did come in garbage time. Actually, they did a study. 91.5% of LeBron's points this year came when the team was either down by 15 or up by 15.
I seen that.
So
What a
And
stat.
it
what a
was something
stat,
like
right?
60. It was a higher 60 percentage of every single 3-point bucket he made this season was
And
also in
LeBron
jump
James is
time.
loving this the most, all this turmoil, because it takes eyes away from the Lakers. They're not the center of attention. They're not getting all the hate and what should the Lakers do? They need to do this and all the pressure.
Yeah,
He's loving all
not
this
being in the
other.
limelight.
Yeah, exactly. Not in the limelight in this
Which is
circumstance.
rare for LeBron because usually he puts himself in the fucking hot seat.
Yeah, you can't turn on Sports Center without seeing something about LeBron, but he's enjoying this time.
Yes.
He
Now,
was the one that said match that energy. But sorry.
now, unfortunately, we're not going to be like the Colin Cowherds and the Skip Baylesses of the world. We're gonna end it there before we say something we're gonna regret. Thank you all for listening. Big shout out to our guest Petey. We're gonna try to have him back on the show in a little bit. We love talking to you, buddy. We appreciate you coming on. And for everyone else, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah,
I'm Peter
yeah.
Rock, and with my boy Jazzy Main
Jazzy Main.
and our other boy Petey, not to be
Thank you,
confused.
guys.
Have a great night, everybody, and be safe out there, y'all. Peace.
Hype.